Thank you, Samantha. Our second speaker in this pairing is JJ Hall, whose speech is on the topic of identities. Okay, let's welcome JJ.
One of my most irrational fears is that I'll introduce myself incorrectly. Many times I experience this fear, let's say at the beginning of the semester when my professor asks everyone to say their name and say their pronouns, but in my head, all I'm thinking is, my name is JJ, he, him, JJ, he, him, JJ, he, him, until it gets to me and everyone's looking at me and I mutter out, my name is JJ, she, him. And just like that, I will have introduced myself incorrectly. And let's say I'm embodying my inner introvert, I might neglect to correct the class before someone else goes. So I can imagine later on in the semester, a friend is introducing me to someone new and they say, hey, have you met JJ? She's such a nice guy. And I feel that happens to me. I can't recover from that. I'm gonna have to wait till next semester to reintroduce myself. But the point of this silly little hypothetical is to get at this idea that one's identity is not something that's always easy to convey. Many times it's complex and it evolves and it changes and grows over time, but what I want to petition to all of you is that if your identity is growing more complex, it's a sign that you're also growing up. And to do so, I want to speak about my identity in different stages of my life. So let's say you were to talk to a younger JJ. Let's call him JJ Mini. If you were to ask him, who are you? Who is JJ? Well, first he would post up with one of these. He would look to the left, he would look to the right, and he would say, JJ, man, he's the coolest kid on the block. I remember young me, he was so proud. He would swing into his grandma's house and say, Grandma, I love you. And my grandma would say, I love you too, JJ. You're such a handsome young man. Dang right, Grandma, I am a handsome young man. And in my mind, all of my fans would be adoring me. They'd say, JJ, you're the coolest. JJ, you're the greatest. Because at that time, in that place, in that space, who I was simple. Who is JJ? The coolest kid on the block. Who is JJ? A handsome young man. His grandma said so. And if I'm to give further context on my upbringing, I grew up in sunny South Florida. And one thing you need to know about growing up there is that there, either you're an immigrant, or your mom's an immigrant, or your grandma's an immigrant. So for me and my family, we're Jamaican. I was born here, my mom and grandma from the island, but my friends, they were from all over. They were Colombian, Venezuelan, Bolivian, Brazilian, Cuban, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Haitian, Jamaican, from all over the Caribbean, all over Latin America. So as we transition to, let's say, a JJ in high school, if you were to ask him, who are you? Well, first he would say, my family is Jamaican, but maybe, technically, actually, I was born here. And the order that comes in is so important because at the time, JJ was not proud of his American identity. And even if I can get a little bit more serious here, where it was going to school here, sitting through a couple of US history classes, you learn about all different sorts of atrocities and tragedies. You learn about the displacement of the natives. You learn about African slavery, you learn about women not having the right to vote. And what this did is it made it so difficult for me to want to connect my identity to a country with such a challenging past. And even bringing it to more current events, it felt like going to school every other week was a code red drill, or every other month there was a bomb threat. And when those are the experiences that I'm having, learning about a shameful past and a dangerous present, it harbored this type of resentment in me that I carried with me to my freshman year at Hamilton. Now, one of the first things that people will ask you here at Hamilton is, where are you from? And in response, I would say, I'm from Florida. And they would ask, do you like Florida? And then I would say, I love Florida. I love the sun and I love the heat. I love that it smells like the ocean everywhere you go. I love eating mangoes off of the trees. I love hugging my mom and seeing my friends and going to my church. I even love the little curly-tailed lizards that scurry all over the place. And then in response, they would say, you mean Florida with the politics and the crazy people? And then I would respond with, Actually, upon further reconsideration. But that interaction, what that did is it brought me to this critical point where I realized that everything I ever loved, every person I ever hugged, all the good experiences that made me who I am today happened in this country. And no, it's not because of America, but without a doubt, it would not have happened the way that it happened if it had not occurred here. So to reject my American identity feels like I'm rejecting all the goodness and the blessings I've been fortunate enough to experience. But to take that on feels like I'm taking on the pain and I'm taking the shame and I'm taking the blame. And so as I'm sitting with this thought, I'm reflecting and I can correlate it to my age, right? So when I was young, things were simple, but when I grew in height and I grew in knowledge and I learned new words and new terms, how they react and interact, well, things got more complex. And one of the things I learned about here at Hamilton was this idea of the double consciousness spoken about by W.E.B. Du Bois. And what he talks about in the context of the African American is that while one may view oneself as an American, one is also mindful of the fact that everyone else sees them as a black man or as a black woman. So one must live with this cognitive dissonance of being two things and one thing at the same time. And that's why I bring to this point again that if your identity is becoming more complex, it's a sign that you are growing up. And how many of us know we have so much more than just one or two identities? Yes, there's nationality. Yes, there's race, but there's gender, religion, socioeconomic status, there's language, and all of these identities are overlapping and intersecting and evolving and multiplying, and it is so easy to become overwhelmed. What I hope this idea does for you, this idea that your growth is related to your identity, is that it allows you to look at where you are right now or who you are right now. And maybe you don't know. And maybe you can look into the future and you don't know who you're becoming. But what you can do is that you can look to the past and you can say, I'm not who I was. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough for today. Thank you.